everyone. It's Dr. Glenn Bowe, and I have Vivek Kinra. Vivek, what's up, man?
What's up, Nifty Thrifty Nation? How's it going?
Oh, man, so I'm super excited to have you on. So, Vivek, you're the man. You're the man when it comes to PPO. So here's the thing. So we were talking, and you were giving me some tips because I have a heavy PPO practice myself. You were giving me some tips, and then you were telling me something that you were getting into a new venture here. So before we even jump into that, let's talk about how you got even started in this dental business, man. How did you even get sucked in this crazy world that we're in? Tell me about.
Like a lot of people, I married a dentist, right? And so, even when, after I married a dentist for a few years, right, she was an associate and then eventually wanted to start her own practice. So started her own practice, but probably the first year or so, I wasn't very involved in the day-to-day operations, right? I was involved to make sure that, I'm getting all the nifty thrifty deals for all the things that we're purchasing at the office. Because if I had left it to my wife, I'm sure we would have built a Taj Mahal practice with all full price, etc. Sorry, Luda, I know it's a dig at you, but you know what I'm talking about. But other than that, I wasn't, I had my own corporate career. I was a VP of mobile application development. So I was that nerd that used to sit down and write software for GPS navigation systems and lead software development teams, right? So, that's where a lot of my background came in. Even all the leadership and management that I had where I led departments, it was all from a technical background, right? So one day, this was February of 2017, I went to a midwinter conference, and I remember, I think he's a consultant, Dr. Mike Abernethy, and he was giving a speech, right? And I was listening to him, and I sent my wife a message saying, I think I'm going to quit my job and let's do this full time. And to be quite honest, at that time, our practice wasn't doing very hot, right? In fact, we were probably one of the rare practices that somehow managed to lose money, right? And I'm not talking about tax accounting money that's just a made up depreciation stuff. I'm talking about real money from the bank without taking salaries. Somehow the bank account was going down, right? So I sent her a message saying, hey, I think, I want to get into this thing and let's do it. She was pretty nervous, right? And then come around March of 2017, I decided to take a small sabbatical from my corporate career, right? And decided to take a few months off. And my plan was that, hey, I'm going to spend about 2-3 months over here, try to, piece all the things together and go back to my profession. Well, those 3 months turned into 4 turned into 5, and I fell in love with this whole thing. I loved it, it was ours. There's so much, it's one of those things where I was always a very, very hard worker, but this time I was loving spending the nights and weekends, etc., building the business side of dentistry, which, as all of you guys know, it's a industry in itself, right? Because it's one of the hardest things. I think the business of dentistry is one of the hardest businesses out there. And so gradually, the sabbatical grew into a point where I actually just gave in my resignation and decided to focus full time and built this practice. And, I will share this, that one of the reasons why, I've been very, very open and very, very active in a lot of the Facebook groups. I've kind of chronicled my story quite a bit over the different groups, including yours, right? And so eventually, one of the big themes that I was seeing from people is everyone hates PPOs, right? Mm-hmm. There's this concept that, you're not supposed to like PPOs. Well, I'll tell you what, and this is absolute reality. I'm not trying to use this as a pitch for anything like that. We at our office absolutely love PPOs, right? I would rather have a PPO patient than a cash patient every single day, right? And this is not, again, I genuinely believe it. Every time the phone rings, I'm hoping this person has PPOs.
So that's the thing, man. When I was talking to you, Vivek, we were telling me about just kind of creating this new venture that you're doing. You were telling me that so many friends that you made on social media. That's the great thing about all these Facebook dental groups, right? You meet all these people, and actually I met you for the very first time down in Jamaica. It was so awesome.
Right.
It was so awesome hanging out there. And then you were telling me, man, I made all these friends here, and I see all these friends of mine. They're struggling in these PPO practices, and I figured out kind of a way to really kind of make it more profitable. And you really want to try to give back and really help start off helping these friends, and now you really want to help other doctors as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's, like you said, I think we kind of tweaked all the little knobs off being a PPO practice to a point where, we're probably running at like peak efficiency, right? And over the years, I've got enough knobs that I've tweaked to a point where, we're like, we are a fairly, knock on wood, fairly, profitable PPO practice, right? We're very, very heavy PPO, right? And like I said, we are in a pretty low income area, right? The household income around our area is $49,000. We're not in the ritzy, glamorous part of Chicago. We're in this corner part where people don't like to come too much, right? But so, and we're in our area where, and anybody can check, within a 0.25 mile radius, there's 16 dental offices, right? It's a 1 to 805 is our ratio, and all of them, except PPOs, some of them are pretty heavy corporate practices, right? So unfortunately, we picked a very tough area to start in. Didn't do any research or anything like that. I got some cheap foreclosure, decided to, buy it and started there, right? But the good thing is because of that, we've had to be on our A game throughout, otherwise we would just get consumed and have a very stressful practice. So over time, like we said, we've kind of like dialed down the PPOs to such a degree, or dial it up to such a degree that, it's become very, very profitable. And that's where I've realized that, okay, you know what, you can have some extremely, extremely profitable PPO practices. And I want to add one more thing to it. When people think of busy, profitable practices, they're thinking, cheap fillings and, just cheap labs or something like that for crowns and doing like some very quick stuff. That's not the case, right? My wife, we're one dentist, one hygienist practice, right? So small practice. We are, I would call, a very high-end practice, right? I mean, we serve, latte macchiatos with whipped cream and all that stuff to our patients that,
You got the iPads all over the practice. I mean, all sorts of cool stuff. So, you guys, what's really cool is you guys created this practice, heavy in PPO, but really a nice, very nice high-end PPO practice. And so some of the things when we talked about off air here is that you created a system, because PPO practice, right? You got to be efficient.
For sure.
You gotta be efficient. If you are not efficient, if you are not on point, and I see Bruce Baird in there typing a few things here. I learned one of these things from Bruce Baird is about scheduling to production. I mean, that works with PPO practice, fee for service practice, whatnot. So I'm going back to that. You have to be efficient, and you created the system here that really is efficient. Can you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, so I'll, I think a lot of people have their own formulas for profitability, right? I mean, for our practice, what I realized, there are few things that we had to get really good at, right? Number one, you've got to get really good PPO fees, right? I mean, if you've got terrible fees, that's, not going to work out as well. So that's number one. Second is, I call scheduling efficiency, right? You just have to be very good and making sure that the providers in the office, whether it's a dentist, assistants, hygienists, any specialists that you come in, while they're there for clinical hours, have tools in their hands and they're working on a patient, right? Third is if it's insurance, you've got to maximize the insurance. And that's something that I'll talk a lot about, is because it's, first of all, you have to maximize it on the front end, which means two things. Number one, you are not doing any dentistry that you're not going to get paid for. And second, you are doing dentistry that you will get paid for. And a lot of people miss that second piece, and I'll touch up quite a bit on that, right? But that's the third thing about insurance maximization. The fourth is time efficiency, right? So the whole systems that we've created is to make it, I call it, the least amount of time and the fewest amount of clicks to be able to do a task, right? Whether it's sending a lab slip, whether it's sending a referral and all that stuff, right? So we've got all these systems in a paperless office that make it extremely quick for people to be able to do things back in the treatment room, et cetera. And what happens is you're able to see more patients because the team is getting done quicker, right? So that's four. And number five is, I think I might have this Rick Perry moment where you just kind of forget about, because I wrote it somewhere down, right? But, and after that is treatment acceptance, right? The treatment acceptance is very key with PPO practices as well, because you almost have to utilize that person's insurance to their benefit, right? And make their insurance work for them. I know there's a whole school of thought that exists that says, hey, you know what? Get insurance out of the way. right? And build enough value that, they're forgetting about insurance, right? I understand and respect that, thought. But, I also, there is a reality where, if you're in not a very, very high income area, et cetera, the reality is for most people, insurances matter, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so you have to find ways to utilize their insurance for their maximum benefit. And there's a plenty and plenty of different ways that you can do that, right? So those are the areas that, is part of the entire system, right? So you capture everything: good fees, great efficiency, great insurance maximization, and great treatment acceptance. And the last piece of it is, which is what I call the bottom line, right? Which is making sure that every single thing that you've done, you're sending the claims, you're following up, you're getting paid on time for those, as well as making sure if there's any denials, you're appealing them, and doing a lot of stuff up front as well to make sure that a claim doesn't get denied. So those are the 6 areas that I talk about that make sure that a PPO practice is very, very profitable without compromising on quality and being very high end.
And that's really true, because the thing is with PPO practice, I mean, you have to be efficient, you have to be quick, you have to make sure you have to play the game, right? So I'm going to put this up here. I mean, people don't hate the PPO players. That's how it is. That's just how it is. So, the cool thing that I saw when we did this demo off air, right, is that on all your schedules, you actually have all these like quick notes that says every patient, what their history is, right?
Yes.
What the insurance covers. And so when you sit down in a morning huddle and you go through your team, you know exactly, okay, what patients are eligible for what, and there's no guesswork involved. It's already set up there. So talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think, is like one of the main, I call that, it falls under insurance maximization, right? So for pretty much every patient that is coming on a schedule, right? We have customized our practice management software. We use Open Dental, right? And so we've customized our practice management software to a degree where we have all these like little quick codes, about what it means for this insurance, right? So for example, it's an example that I've used in the past: night guards, right? I think I was showing that at some point of time, right? Now, one of the pieces of the puzzle in our system is that your new patient forms have to be entered prior, right? You have to have some of this information before. And I use Yappy. I'll do a shout out to Gina Dorfman. I love Yappy system, right? And it allows you to customize your forms, the online forms. And I always make sure that patients have completed their online forms prior at home before coming in, right? And you can customize those forms. And some of those customizations that I've done is very, very particular in asking very direct questions. Things like, do you believe, I believe I grind, and there's a checkbox and people can checkbox, right? If that happens, right, then what we are looking for on the schedule, we have a custom code called NG, right? And our insurance coordinator will go ahead and check for coverage for night guard and see, if it's covered at what percentage under what conditions, right? And if it is covered at, let's say 80 to 100%, and they see that the patient checked that they believe that they grind their teeth, on the appointment window, you'll see an NG. The good thing about that is there is no more guesswork. The hygienist, the doctor, anybody looking at it can clearly see that both those conditions are met. Number one, they believe they grind their teeth, right? And second, that their night guard coverage already exists. So it's a very easy, and there's no more like time wasted in calling someone to say, hey, can you please call the insurance to check if there's night guard coverage, et cetera. It's all part of there, and you can trust that code, right? The second part of that is our entire process exists so that the treatment planner can go into the treatment plan module and trust the patient copay. And that is an extremely challenging thing to do, because what we are doing when we are doing both the insurance verification to get all the benefits and the maximization, we're entering everything into your practice management software. Not only that, we're entering all the limitations that we can find, right? So a really good example of that is, let's say a limitation or frequency limitation of sealants. And this is something that happened in our office today, right? We had actually a family with 3 kids that came in, and they had a lot of history of sealants that they'd already gotten done, right? And it's funny because I actually made that mistake. Somebody asked me about sealants, right? And I talked about the history, and I violated my own rule that said, look at the treatment plan and trust it, right? And then I got a buzz from our insurance coordinator that said, There is no frequency. So sealant replacement is going to be covered. And so some of the sealants were coming out or fallen off, right? That were just done a year ago. But we knew that even though they're fallen off, insurance will still cover it. And we were able to tell the parent that that's covered, right? And so the whole game is that we get so good at entering all these like very, very caveated limitations into the system. So the treatment planner goes into the treatment plan, and when it says the patient copay, every single thing, as much as the system allows, is accurate. Now, there's some things that are not, the systems don't allow yet, right? And in that case, we actually, put it in the insurance notes as well as the appointment notes, right? So that's one example of making sure that when you are looking at your appointment window at one glance, you can see what all is covered based on some predictions that we've had from their new patient forms that they submitted, right? Things like fluoride, right? I mean, most people just assume, right, that fluoride is not covered for adults, right? And I used to see this happen all the time. I still see this happen in other practices, right, where the hygienist would assume that it's a 35-year-old male that, the insurance doesn't cover it and it's $35. Well, it does cover it. There's no age limitation on this insurance, right? And so we will have a code called F, right? And so when you see a code F, the hygienist can take a look at it and know that fluoride is covered. And it's such an easier conversation, right? And says, hey, we recommend fluoride. Instead of saying your insurance doesn't cover it, which may not be accurate and it's $35, your insurance covers it. Would you like us to proceed? This is the reason why we recommend it, right? And so because of this, it makes a difference. And, again, like I said, I'm a realist, right? And in reality, people do want to know what their insurance covers, and they do make their decisions based on insurance. I have just had to embrace that reality as much as, I would not like to, and as much as providers, you may not want to, right? But we always have to make sure that there is a connect between what they can afford and they have a tool to pay some of that, which is their insurance, and what you're recommending, right? So we're really bridging that gap to let people know that it is covered.
What I want to add on to that is so much easier to get treatment plan acceptance when you can say, yeah, actually your insurance already covers it. You're in the chair. Thing is, you guys already identified that at the morning huddle.
Yes.
That's the thing. You didn't run around with your heads cut off and try to ask the treatment coordinator or insurance coordinator, hey, is that covered? Is that covered? You guys already know. When the patient sits down, you already know what insurance is going to cover for them. All you have to do is just say, oh yeah, let's do fluoride today. It's actually covered by your insurance, or let's do that night guard because it's covered by your insurance or whatnot. So that's like a huge key for you guys to be really efficient.
Yeah, and it goes, beyond a lot of these things, right? And there's another example that happened in our office that I always like to share, right? When we see an emergency patient, right, and there's an emergency coming, we know, out of experience that a lot of times it's an extraction or a root canal can happen, right? And when there's an extraction, a lot of times there's a bone graft, people want to know if there's implant coverage, etc. Right? Now, if you ever call the insurance and get an insurance benefit, right, a lot of times it might just say, yes, bone graft is covered at 50%, right? But what doesn't happen, what doesn't belong in a lot of these faxes or online, or the insurance reps are not forthcoming with this information, is it may say it's only covered, bone graft is only covered if there's a pre-authorization on an implant on file, right? And so what we did in this scenario, for example, right, we know we are getting all this information, getting every little caveat intelligently because we know there's an emergency patient coming that may have an extraction, right? And so what we did is we have these pre-written letters, right? And one of the letters said, I, patient name, am in pain and cannot wait for insurance to pre-authorize my implant in 30 days. I would like to get it extracted, but I would like to proceed with an implant, right? And they sign it, and we then go ahead and attach that as part of a claim. Claim got paid right away, right? Had we missed that caveat, we would have just done a bone graft, et cetera, at no charge, right? Even though your insurance benefit says it's covered at 50%. But we are capturing all these tiny little caveats, just purely out of experience, right? To make sure that we're alerting you about what you have to be ready for, right? And we'll make those notes on your appointment window so that you know that if you are looking to do this, this is a big caveat that you've got to account for, right? And if it's one of those things where when the claim gets denied, it's between a rock and a hard place, right? You either write off that money and you just did some free dentistry, or you send a bill to the patient, you have this ugly conversation and risk bad reviews, et cetera, right? So So that's the whole point of like this insurance maximization, to be so precise and have everything entered into your system, right? With limitations and caveats. That way your treatment planner has a lot of confidence, and you as a provider have confidence that the dentistry that you're doing is going to get paid for.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so look, Vivek, I'm going to say this. I remember I said this to you when we talked a few weeks ago, and everyone who's watching right now is probably thinking the same thing. Well, Vivek, I mean, you're a pro at this PPO stuff, man. It's easy for you, man. It is easy for you. What about everybody else who, their insurance coordinator is still kind of learning the ropes, or maybe they don't know these tricks to be a little bit more efficient? I mean, it's going to be hard for them. So how are you going to help them out here? I mean, you're giving us all these great tips, but you giving tips there in Chicago is not going to help someone down here in Texas that needs some help. So how are you going to help them out?
Yeah, so that's the whole genesis of the company PPO Profits, right? So, I have a business partner who used to be our financial coordinator, right? So he's also very experienced, and he and I, teamed up together and as co-founders of this company that says, all right, you know what, there is a big need. This is happening way too often. Let's bring it to everyone. Let's bring our system to everyone, right? And so the way it works is, right, we have a system. When we get hired as a company, right, we have a whole processes with ticketing, etc. Right, we basically just connect to your schedule, and we are then using our prediction system to actually go ahead and enter all of these verification, as well as entering all of these maximization codes and all the different insurance caveats and limitations, right? And obviously that's on the front end. Then we go ahead and we have this whole sheet called Morning Huddle To-Dos, where we're entering all of these little items that, where we can see that some of this stuff can be moved around to make that day far more profitable, right? And so little things, right, make such a big difference in your daily goals, right, that we enter that from the upfront, right? So we almost do like this whole morning huddle little thing for you, right? And I see it. So, and then obviously from, once the procedure is completed, right, on that procedure, we will basically let you know what all things you need, right? For example, I think a lot of people now may know, and if you don't know, right, Cigna will not pay for a core buildup if more than 50% of the tooth was not missing. And there are two things they need for that. Number one is an intraoral imaging, and second is a narrative that says more than 50% of the tooth was missing, right? If that is not covered, they not only deny it, it's basically not a covered procedure, which means you cannot bill the patient either, right? So we'll have all of the stuff up front. Now, once you've completed the procedure, our clinical team, our team is trained to know which x-rays and which intraoral images, right? We'll just go into your system and go ahead and attach these in the claim processing software that you might be using, and go ahead and send the claims. What happens is, or at least in our experience, what was happening, and I see that a lot of times what's happening in others is, either it's reality or insurance just pulling a fast one, but the claims don't get paid for 3 weeks, and you call and they say, we never received the claim. This used to happen so often to us, right? So now, 2-3 days later, we call, say, did you receive the claim, right? Through the electronic system. And if they say no, then we fax it. And if even then they say we didn't receive it, then after a week, we'll go ahead and mail it, right? But we want to make sure that they receive the claim. And then after a week, starting that, we start just calling to find out where the claim is to get paid. One of the things I actually, I'm going to give a shout out to Dr. Mark Dankowski. I picked this up from him, right? And he, and I don't know if there's reality or not, but he basically said, if you start bugging insurance 1 week later, your claims get paid faster. And we've now started seeing that we just call and say, hey,
Really?
Dr. Luda's been waiting for this claim, right? And now we've gotten to a point where some insurance we know will just get paid in a day, right? We send the claim and next day the payment is posted. It's amazing, right? So that whole claims processing, and then once the EOB comes in, you use your iPhone, you take the front and back picture of your EOB, it gets uploaded to the portal, right? And our insurance coordinator goes ahead and posts the payment. Now, if there is a difference between the insurance estimate and what the insurance pays, we see what happened, right? If there is an appeal, we go ahead and appeal it, right? If there is something that we need the doctor's help, then we have twice a month meetings as part of our monthly training coaching that exists, where we go through some of these claims that got denied and go ahead and add the appropriate narratives, et cetera, to try and get those paid as well. So that's the whole full circle of insurance.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so here's the deal, guys. I mean, so Vivek, he just founded this company, PPO Profits. They are the company you can outsource to for insurance verification, all the insurance tasks. And the thing is being a PPO practice, you got to be efficient, right? Look, you got to be efficient. Can't make these mistakes. But also, here's the thing too: the fees are not going to be the same. Look, Paul is trying to make it. He's been trying to make me crack up all night here. Okay, but here's the thing with him, Paul. All right, Paul, don't throw your phone out the window yet. Just listen to. The thing is that the biggest drain on your profits is not having the right people in the right seat, right? And so finding the right person to do the insurance task, that's crucial. And here's the thing: Vivek is the pro right here. Okay, he's heard everyone's pleas. Man, I need help in this department here. I need to outsource this out. And so, Vivek, okay, tell us a little bit more. Okay, so how does it work exactly? What's the normal fees? How do you pay? How does someone get onboarded? Talk about that process right there.
Yeah, so two things. I guess maybe more than two things, right? Number one, currently we're only taking clients with Open Dental or EagleSoft. Okay. Open Dental is probably the software that we're most comfortable with, right? And so the lead time of starting an Open Dental client is shorter, right? It depends on your IT infrastructure because there's some things that we have to do, but usually I would say about 2 weeks. If it's EagleSoft, it takes about 3 weeks, right? Dentrix is the next one that we're going to start working with, and we're not, I'm a realist, so I don't foresee us doing it before 2019. So we're probably going to start maybe in January and February of starting to take clients for that, right? But otherwise, the process is very simple. We set up your IT so that we can remote in, right? There's a ticketing system that allows us to see, right? There's multiple priority levels in the ticket about when a patient is walking in, including, that the patient is, in the chair or is going to be an emergency patient that's going to be coming in an hour, right? So we make it a point that we're also, when we're doing the verification, prioritizing based on which is the highest priority level, right? So on a payment side, right? And our normal fee is 3.5% of your collections, right? There is no separate fee for insurance verification. There is no separate fee for training. There is no separate fee for consulting because, we go through a complete coaching and consulting program where we utilize our system to tackle all those things like scheduling efficiency, treatment acceptance, et cetera, to get you to become a very humming PPO, profitable PPO practice, right? So all of that stuff, there is no separate charge. So there is a very, very strong invested interest for us to make sure that your collections improve, right? And that your collections are as high as possible because we are simply taking a 3.5% of that. Now, as in, we are part of the Nifty Thrifty Nation. And so it would be amiss if I don't tell you about the Nifty Thrifty do. There is usually a $499 setup fee as well.
Hold up. Let me write this down here. All right. Here we go. All right. What's the Nifty deal?
All right. So normal pricing, $499 setup, and a 3.5% of your collections for everything. Okay. However, the Nifty deal is $199 setup and 3.35% of collections. Okay. A couple of very important caveats that I'll add in there. There is no contract per se, right? Which means there is no, we want to make sure that your collections are really top notch, right? And your revenue is increasing. And so if it turns out in 3 months it's not working out, I've always disliked companies with a contract, right? And so that's something that we don't do either, right? The second thing I'll say, the only one place where it comes with a contract is the PPO negotiations, right? And the way that works is, I think, Glenn, you know that as well, right? That I know this insurance landscape really well, right? And there is a big mistake people make that they assume that PPOs are, once you sign a contract with them, that's the best fees that you're going to get. And a lot of people way of negotiating is calling the insurance company and begging for $2 more. It doesn't work, right? They'll fax. I think I'll refrain from which finger they're going to fax back, but that's the copy of the fax that you'll receive back when you actually call them to try to get an increase. But there's really, really good strategies of getting really good fees from the same insurances, right? And so the only time that there is a contract is when we do that for you. That's because there is no separate charge for that. There is an upfront charge, Okay, but you get that after 1 year of contract, simply because our goal is to increase your PPO fees, because that makes you more profitable, that makes us more profitable. So again, we have a very, very strong vested interest in making sure you have really, really good PPO fees as well. So that's the only time there's a contract, obviously, because that's not the space that we want to be in, right? And so we're not trying to get a fee and be done with it. We are trying to make sure that we are your partner as your insurance provider, not provider, I'm sorry, insurance financial arm, right? And as a side service, we're going to do that to get you really good fees as well. And if that happens, then we'll get into a 1 year contract.
And so Oya from the Z Group, shout out to her. She has like an awesome medical billing course.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to set up in Houston, but she did bring up some stuff here that I want you to talk about. Now, she was talking about like what the fees are, the 3.3%. How much is that if you're collecting 100,000? She's talking about over $3,000 there. But if you break it down, right? I want to ask everybody this who's watching right now. If you break it down, how much do you pay your insurance coordinator? Right now, down in Texas, it's a lot cheaper, right? Than let's say where Paul Goodman is up in Philly, right? Or someone who's on the West Coast, like Ashley on the West Coast, what she pays her staff is a lot more than what I pay. So if you think about it, think about what you pay your team member who does the insurance verification or the insurance coordinator. Okay, think about what you pay them. Are they also maximizing what you're doing in your PPO practice? How much is it going to cost to get someone who knows what they're doing and get them in your practice, right? I would guarantee you that it's a lot higher than what he's collecting. And here's the thing, Vivek's company, they only get paid for how well you do. So if you're not doing good, then he doesn't get paid as much. Now, if you hire somebody on your team and you're not doing good, it doesn't matter. You're still paying those people. They don't care. All right. So that's the difference there. So I just want to put some perspective there, because a lot of times people think about it like, oh man, percentage, man, that's a rip off, whatever. The thing is, go back and look at what you're paying for your team. Look at what other people are paying for the team and ask yourself, are they as good? Right. And here's the thing with his company, which I really love. I'm a big fan of outsourcing, guys. I'm a huge fan. That's why I always try to bring on different companies that help you outsource tasks, whether it be recalls, phone calls, insurance services, marketing. I try to do that because that is Nifty, Thrifty, guys, outsourcing that. Because you know what? Vivek's company, they go to work for you. They go to work every day. They don't call in sick. They don't party the night before. Hopefully not. Right? They don't party the night before, not show up. That's the big difference there. That's why I'm a big fan of outsourcing. Yeah. So Charlotte just talks about that people always complain about, man, I don't have the staff and the staff know-how to handle all the insurance stuff. But what do you say to that, Vivek?
Well, that's definitely true. And I will tell you this, right? There is definitely a lack of training that exists, right? And with everything, not just insurance, because every insurance is so different. They have all their different caveats, right? That it becomes really, really challenging to catch all that stuff, right? And really challenging to understand some of that stuff as part of our service, right? I know someone mentioned that, with the percentage, and I'm glad that was a great analogy that you shared. But one of the things that I want to make sure that comes through this as well is that we are going to train your team as well, right? As much as we're going to do everything, we want your team to be very, very knowledgeable about insurances, right? Because sometimes what happens is the system doesn't have the limitations, and you just almost have to read some of the notes and understand some of that, right? So we will train your team to understand how to read this, how to catch these little caveats, and then how to talk to people about that to get really good treatment acceptance on some of that stuff, right?
But hold up. I want to go back to that, because I think that people are so focused right now. As I'm looking at the comments, they're focused on what your company is going to do. It's going to do basically they're outsourcing all the insurance stuff to you guys. But you brought up something that's really important that you're going to do that no one else does. You just said that you were going to work with the team and help them get more efficient, and you're going to show all these You're going to train them on how to do all these things you just talked about. So you're basically, are you throwing in some PPO consulting too? Is that what you're doing?
It's part of that, right? Absolutely, right? Because you have to understand that insurance maximization and verification and claims processing is just one piece of it, right? The full circle is to make sure that every little system is dialed down to such a degree, in fact, a replica of our office, right? Now, I can tell you one thing, and this is all true, I've shared this very often, right? A year and a half ago, we weren't doing that hot, right? And I can say this with great confidence that not only are with a very, very similar team makeup, right? We're still a very small team, one dentist, one hygienist, two dental assistants, and a couple of guys, a couple of folks at the front, right? So very, very tiny office. And our production has doubled and our collection has gone up to 250%, right? In a matter of a little over a year, right? And the reason why it happened is because every little system that's in the office, we've gotten it to a point where it's so efficiently tuned, right? And that only happens is when your team is trained. Your team has to still be very good at trained at treatment acceptance, right? And there are a lot of strategies because in our practice for a little over a year and a half, before I started this company, I was the person that going in and telling people why this dentistry costs so much, right? And so I've got a lot of experience on in our patient acceptance in our office. Another shout out to a company, Dental Intel, that I use, right? For October has been 92%. For this year, we're averaging about 87%, right? Which means almost 9 out of 10 patients are saying yes to the proposed treatment and booking their next appointment. Dental Intel says that your goal should be 65%, right? And so we are way past that, right? And again, there's some really good, very real world strategies that we use that we train you on, right? Because all these things are a waste if you don't have people that are accepting treatment and you're doing dentistry, right? In terms of insurance, we have to train your treatment coordinator, right? We have to train your rest of the team, right? Including the dentist on how to prioritize treatment, et cetera, and how to learn how to use the system, when to call somebody in for treatment planning, when to go on yourself, right? So there's a lot of things because I live this life day in, day out, and so that's my heartbeat, right? And so every single thing that I'm training on is some things that I've lived and I live through on a day-to-day basis. So it's not theory. And one thing that a lot of people I think that have known me and followed me through me being in dentistry know one thing: I will never say something that I don't actually believe in, right? And usually I will never say something about anything that I have not personally experienced, right? So I've had to personally try it, and our practice is my lab, right? We try so many different things. I've probably used every software that's out there, right, to try to optimize it. And I've gotten it to a point where I'm like, all right, we are doing so much in so little time with very few people. And that's what I bring to your office. So yes, training, consulting, coaching, everything is part of that because we want to just make sure that you're not just utilizing us for outsourcing that, but your team is so finely tuned into the process that every single day that you go there, you're now making more money. Because I will consider our partnership as a dentist and us not a grand success if 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, your revenue is the same, your collections are the same, right? Because in that case, we're not adding the value. I'm very, very confident that we're going to walk into your practice and we're going to do all the things that we talked about with fee negotiations, with treatment acceptance, scheduling efficiency, time efficiency, insurance maximization, that you will see with the same team that you have today. We're not talking about adding new people with overhead. With the same people, you are actually going to produce and collect more.
I mean, that sounds pretty nifty thrifty to me, Vivek. So we got a question from the audience here. They're asking about the training. And I think we talked about this too. I think you wanted to do a combination of like recorded and live training too. So he's asking about that. Is it live or is it recorded? And I think that's the answer right there. It's kind of a combination of both. But he wants to know how many hours of training is there? I guess that would depend on which office you're working with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as part of our services, right, you get 6 hours anyways, right? Now, the reality is that nobody, from us will count the hours, right? I want to, because I've got such a vested interest, right? And we're not getting paid on an hourly basis, et cetera, right? I want to make sure that if it takes longer, that we're putting in that effort to make sure that your team gets, really, really strong. So we have twice a month sessions. Once after the 15th of the month, whatever day works out really good for you, right? So we give you your financial heartbeat, we go over your claims, some basic, stuff, but that's followed by, a team training, right? Where we train the team on a lot of different aspects, and then just one-on-one with the office manager or the dentist to talk about, all right, what are the next steps that we believe that you should do to continue to increase revenue, right? And then obviously at the end of the month, we wait for 3 to 4 business days while some of the accounting is already done. And if you just did some care credit, those funds have hit, right? And then we take a look at on the 3rd or the 4th business day, and we repeat this process, and we do a team training at the starting of the month and the consulting, etc., right? But beyond that, for every client, and we've got clients right now, everyone has my, personal phone number. And a lot of times people will send me messages, etc. And I love this stuff, right? So this is, I'm never shy, right? If it's 11 p.m., I'm talking to somebody, right? I mean, yesterday, I think I was talking to somebody at midnight, right? Going over some of the things. So, it's, structured. It's going to be 6 hours, right? 3 hours mid-month, and then 3 hours at the end of the month. But informally, I'll be there.
So Vivek, okay, what's the easiest way to get a hold of you, man? I mean, obviously right now you're scaling very slowly. You already got all these clients. Okay, you're scaling very slowly. So realistically, how many new clients do you think you need on board in the next few months?
Yeah, so our goal and the way we're going to do it is between 5 to 10 clients a month. Okay, that's our goal. Now it also depends on if it's Open Dental versus EagleSoft, etc. Right? It's just easier for us to do, but we're going to cap it to 5 to 10 a month because I have to share this with everyone very openly, right? That this is a very, very time-intensive process, right? It is so we always have to onboard team members and train them really well before they can come on board. I'll tell everyone realistically, you're looking at a 3-week time period from the day that you say, let's proceed, because we have to make some infrastructure changes to make sure that your IT is set up the way, you've got good internet speed, etc. And then bring on your account executive as well as train the team on your particular account, because every dentist is also different, right? I mean, we work with dentists that don't do root canals, right? Or extractions. Well, I mean, is it really important to do a lot of the verification and maximization for a procedure they don't do? Probably not. Right? So there are some customization for each client that we do that we say, okay, you know what, this client doesn't do implants. Do we really have a big need of actually getting all the implant coverage over here? Because we know that's going to get referred out to a different office that's going to have in-network, out-of-network, etc. So the short answer is, we're going to gradually ramp up because we want to make sure we're doing a really good job. We're not going to take on too many clients all at once and do a 70% job for everyone, right? And obviously because there is, with the consulting and the coaching, that is limited by me personally, right? So I want to make sure that we're gradually, and I'm conscious of the fact that I can give you as much time. So we're basically benchmarking 5 to 10 new clients a month at the moment.
I love it. Okay, guys. So, man, I mean, this Facebook Live went just crazy. All these posts and stuff. I blame actually that to Paul, but thanks Paul for jumping in. But okay, guys. So one more time before we leave, Vivek, what is the normal price you charge?
Normal price is $4.99 as a setup cost, and then 3.5% of collections. The Nifty deal is $199 a setup cost and 3.35% of collections.
I love it. Okay, and the best way to get a hold of you, guys, he's always online here. Just message the guy. Don't message him too much, too late, okay? Because he needs to sleep. But message him. He's onboarding just 5 practices per month right now. And when we first talked about this, Vivek, because I wanted to do a Nifty deal with you, right? You were telling me that you were slammed from the other Facebook groups that you did a Facebook Live. So I was like, look, you got to come to Nifty Thrifty next. We're going to hammer out a Nifty deal, help out the members here. So guys, if you want to start working with them, you better get on it. So Vivek, thank you so much for jumping on, buddy. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks,
guys.